Our next teller is Chris Aronson. Chris's first experience of storytelling was as the hero of the stories his grandfather told him. As an adult, Chris traveled the world both before and after university, when he taught English as a second language at Vancouver Island University. There he found that he could engage his students who were struggling with English grammar and writing by telling the students stories, especially about his own travels in their homelands. And so he is bringing you a story of the first time his friends E.T. and Daisy traveled to India.
Good evening. I'm going to tell you once again tonight about two friends of mine, E.T. and Daisy. They were inveterate travelers. Perhaps you met them at an Around Town Tellers evening in the past. Tonight, we're going to go to India for the first time for E.T. and Daisy. It's 1970, 50 years ago. At that time, it was still possible to travel from Europe to India overland, which they did by bus and train through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and into India. 1969, late 1969. E.T. was trudging through sloppy snow, thinking, why are we still in Minneapolis for another winter? Towards a footbridge over the Mississippi River on the campus of the University of Minnesota. As he entered the footbridge, his right arm shot out and grabbed a metal contraption that had been thrown into his path. Good catch, eh? I call them worry wires. They're made by Tibetan refugees who followed the Dalai Lama into exile in India when the Chinese communists entered Tibet. He went to India to save Tibetan Buddhism. Oh, E.T. was interested. Peter slapped the floor, invited him to sit down. And E.T. did so. And Peter picked up a worry wire and gave E.T. a lesson. In front of Peter was a bedspread. On it were displayed many curiosities from his travels in Asia and India. Well, Peter was full of stories, and E.T. was really keen listening. A young man came up, a very hairy young man. Remember, it's 1970. He was taken with the jacket Peter was wearing, and he asked about it. And Peter told him, well, it's lined with 100% caracal wool from sheep that graze high in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. The skin and the wool are sent to Kabul, where my friend Muhammad has a factory. They produce the jackets there and then send them on to me. Far out, said the young man. How much? Peter thought about it and said, well, $50. Oh, bummer, said the young man. That's too much for a student. And he began taking the jacket off and apologizing for wasting Peter's time. Well, Peter cut him short. For you, today, only today, $35. Well, the young man was certainly surprised. He reached for his wallet, pulled out the money, gave it to Peter, took the coat, and got out of there as fast as he could before Peter changed his mind. And Peter began to chuckle. He told E.T., well, you know, I start high, I go low, and these Americans, they just can't resist. Peter was Canadian from Nova Scotia. Well, E.T. was really taken with Peter, and he returned to the bridge whenever he had some free time in an afternoon. And he would sit and listen to Peter's tales of Indian travel and watch how Peter dealt with the various people who stopped by to ask about his curiosities. Well, this went on for quite a while. Daisy became somewhat concerned. She noticed that E.T. wasn't the same serious, hard-working graduate student that she'd known and loved anyway. Finally, she decided, well, she'd better go and meet this Peter guy. And she did. And lo and behold, Daisy too was taken with Peter and his stories. And she began accompanying E.T. to go to the bridge and listen to Peter. Time passed. And then E.T. came out with it. He'd been thinking about this. He told Daisy, you know, we could escape the winter. Let's go to India. And much to his relief, she was keen for the idea. They bought tickets, set a departure date, and they went to say goodbye to Peter. Now, Peter had some parting advice, and this is what he told them. He said, you'll never get used to the pervasive, in-your-face poverty of so many Indians. There's nothing you can do about that. But when you find yourself out of sorts over minor irritations like taxiwalas who demand then plead for twice the agreed-upon fare, or the Indians' preference for scrum rather than lining up or taking turns to buy something like a train ticket. Chill out. Have a cup of tea. Sweet, Indian, spiced, milky tea. Daisy. Tea. Tea. I don't drink tea. I don't even like tea. 2 months later, E.T. and Daisy had traveled across Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, into India by bus and train. In India, they caught a train in Amritsar near the Pakistani border, and they arrived in New Delhi, at the New Delhi train station. Now, there was no internet. There were no travel books. There were no cell phones. So it was problematic finding a hotel when you arrived in a place that you'd never been before. But they had devised a technique for doing so. And that was to go to the district near the train station or the bus station where the cheap hotels were located and begin from there. So they hired a bicycle rickshawwala at the train station in Delhi. A wala is a person who makes their living at a particular job, like a tea wala, or a bicycle rickshawwala, or a taxiwala. They agreed upon a fare, and he agreed to take them to the cheap hotel district. After a while, they noticed that they'd gone past the same post office twice. A scam, and it was. The wala wanted to drag out the journey as far as he could to ask for more money. When they realized what was happening, they bailed out, paid the fellow the fare they agreed upon. Well, of course, he was asking double the fare and pleading poverty, 5 children, need food, etc., etc. Well, Daisy had had enough. She stopped a dapper-looking Sikh gentleman who passed by, obviously a class above the rickshawwala, and inquired, "Is there a coffee shop around here?" "Madam, they are not drinking coffee in this poor neighborhood, but there is a teawala right across the street." Now, the idea was that Daisy was used to going to coffee shops. They'd leave their bags with her, and then E.T. would walk the streets looking for a hotel, then come back for Daisy and the bags. So that was the plan. Daisy set up in the tea shop, and in fact, the tea shanty was leaning right up against the wall of the Khyber Pass Hotel, so E.T. would go into the hotel. So Daisy was settled. E.T. went into the hotel. The desk clerk greeted him. "Good afternoon, good sir. Indeed, we have a room for you and your missus." E.T. checked out the rooms, found one with a balcony looking out over the street, and decided that that would do for a start in India. He returned to the tea shanty. Daisy was enjoying herself, giggling in conversation with a teenage girl. In front of the shop, an old lady was taking a bath, fully clothed, in a water tap. E.T. had to step over a cow asleep in the doorway. Well, Daisy had already finished 2 cups of tea, was about to order a third. She finished a samosa, a pea and potato samosa, and she had a Indian milk-based sweet in front of her, believe it or not, called barfi. She told E.T., you've got to see this. Watch the teawala make a cup of tea. E.T. ordered a cup of tea, Daisy ordered another, and the teawala set about his task. He had a cauldron simmering, a cauldron 1/3 milk and 2/3 water. Now, I forgot to mention earlier that part of E.T.'s, the advice E.T. and Daisy received from Peter was, drink tea because you cannot drink the water in India. It's not safe. Tea is boiled so you can drink it, and that's what everybody does. The human body is 60% water, and you need to top up that water every day in a hot climate like India's, so drink tea. So Daisy was ordering her 3rd cup, and E.T. ordered a cup too. The teawala put into the cauldron black tea leaves, palm sugar, and all manner of spices, cardamom, cinnamon, black pepper, ginger, and let it percolate a bit. And after he thought it was ready, he poured it through a cloth bag, which filtered out the larger particles, and into a fairly good-sized cup, enough for 2 cups of tea. And then he took another cup in his other hand, and he began to arc the tea from one cup to the next. And part of his signature performance was to progressively increase the distance between the 2 cups until he had a great arc of tea going back and forth. When he decided that tea was sufficiently frothy, he poured out 2 cups of tea and presented them to E.T. and Daisy. Well, after their tea, they went to the hotel and they went to their room. A great fan was wobbling in circles around above their heads. E.T. placed a chair under the doorknob. For what reason, he didn't really know, but he felt more secure having done it. Well, they were exhausted after their overnight train ride from the Pakistani border to New Delhi. And in no time at all, both of them were asleep, sound asleep. E.T. woke up. Daisy woke up. E.T., what do you think that is? He said, I don't know, but my watch says it's 4 o'clock in the morning. What could be at 4 o'clock in the morning? Daisy, well, maybe it's the police. E.T., no. They would announce themselves. E.T., well, maybe it's thieves, robbers. What should we do? But no, they wouldn't knock. Why would they knock? Daisy couldn't help it. Duh! It's so that we'd open the door. Oh, let's be quiet. Chai, Saab. Chai, Mem Saab. Are you needing tea? Are you wanting tea this morning? Saab, Mem Saab, Chai Garam. Daisy started to crack up. She said, it's the teawala. He's getting a jump on his competition this morning. And she's laughing. E.T. was having none of it. He was pissed. Waking us up at 4 o'clock in the morning. What does he think he's doing? We don't want any tea. No tea, no chai. The knocking stopped. Daisy had no trouble at all going back to sleep. Whereas E.T., he tossed and he turned and he fulminated. He just couldn't seem to get back to sleep. He's berating in his mind the teawala. What was the matter with that guy? I'll never buy tea from him. The fool. And on it went. He tossed and turned. No, again, E.T. said. He's back. I recognize the knock. No tea, we don't want tea. Go away, damn it. And he got out of bed, determined to give the chaiwala a piece of his mind. He opened the door. There was the chaiwala. He had a pot with a long spout in his hand, as well as a teacup. And on top of his head was a tray, and on that tray was perhaps a dozen teacups. Coffee, Sob? Are you preferring coffee? Isn't it? E.T. looked at his watch. It was 4:15.
Thank you, Chris, for that story. Travel can not only broaden you, but wake you up. 2. I wonder how I could possibly learn to do that tea tossing, because I am a tea person. Perhaps I should start practicing outside.